Thank you, Nola. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I hope you're all well and making it through the fall term. Today, I'm going to be presenting the initial findings from the community research project that we completed this summer in collaboration with the Member Engagement Committee. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the goals and objectives of this project and the methods used. Then I'm going to go into the initial findings from the analysis. I'm going to then finish up with some recommendations for future work. Then we'll have maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 for questions, and then we're going to break out to discuss the findings and to come up with ideas or recommendations for future priorities or activities that Science Atlantic can focus on. So as a result of the COVID-19 closures in the spring, we had half of our 2019-2020 conferences canceled. In addition to that, we weren't entirely sure what this fall and winter were going to look like for our conferences. So we weren't sure if they were going to be virtual, if they were going to be in person, or if they were going to be canceled altogether. And because we provide quite a bit of administrative support for our conference organizers, we had some time and resources that we needed to reallocate to other activities. So at that time, we began to shift our attention to the concept of member engagement. So we did research into what member engagement is, how other organizations define member engagement, and then we started discussing as a staff what member engagement meant to Science Atlantic. So if we could identify a member who was engaged, how would we like them to interact with the organization? So through these discussions, we came to realize that we didn't have a full understanding for what our community needed. And so we wanted to understand those needs and understand the challenges of our community to better adapt our organization, and then we could further engage our community that way. So for this project, we used a broad definition of faculty to include both tenure track positions, as well as non-tenured positions like lab instructors, technicians, teaching fellows, etc. So currently the Science Atlantic membership consists almost entirely of tenure track positions. And one of our strategic priorities is to broaden our reach beyond our current membership. So we wanted to gain perspectives from faculty that are outside of that tenure track position. So we decided to do interviews with faculty in the region. And so when we were recruiting participants, we followed these 4 broad goals. So we wanted to include faculty who were not currently involved with Science Atlantic. So we did that because we wanted to understand their challenges as faculty members rather than their challenges and needs as a Science Atlantic member. So a lot of people, when they think of Science Atlantic, they think about our conferences. So we wanted to elicit responses without that bias and focus on what people need within their roles rather than what they want Science Atlantic to do or not to do. On top of this, we wanted to include a range of disciplines and departments. We wanted to include as many of our member institutions as possible. And we wanted to have a diverse representation of positions, responsibilities, and levels of experience. So in total, we contacted 422 faculty members, and we got 44 people to participate in interviews. One of our interview recordings didn't work, so we had to omit the data from one of our interviews. So we analyzed 43 interviews in total. So here are some demographics of the sample. We were able to include 12 out of our 17 member institutions. We had 14 disciplines represented, and 4 of those do not fall under the 10 Science Atlantic divisions. So those included engineering, communications, health sciences, and trades and transportation. In terms of years of experience, that range from 1 year all the way to 54 years. And then we also grouped the faculties into two main categories. So we did 26 interviews with tenure track faculty, and then 17 interviews with non-tenured positions, and 6 of those were part-time roles. So we did the majority of the interviews via telephone, with a few being conducted via email. And we had 12 open-ended questions with follow-up questions. And each of the interviews lasted between 20 to 60 minutes in length. We used a platform called Deduce to analyze the qualitative data. So this is a software similar to NVivo or Atlas TI. And we developed the initial coding framework directly from the questionnaire that was used in the interviews. And then we developed subcodes after doing more analysis and more in-depth review of the transcripts. So we came up with 3 overall themes, and these will be what you will be discussing in the breakout groups after the presentation. So the first theme is, how can we support new faculty? The second is, how can we improve the faculty experience? And the third is, how can we broaden our divisions? So for those of you who aren't familiar with Science Atlantic, our membership structure is divided into 10 discipline divisions, which are made up of discipline-specific committee members. So for example, the biology division consists of 11 biology committee reps. So within this third theme, we try and identify ways in which we can expand our audience beyond this current committee structure. So the first theme is, how can we support new faculty? So under this theme, we looked at responses that were given around the challenges that participants faced as a new faculty member. And we also asked them what advice they would give to new faculty based on their experiences. So based on the responses, we came up with 3 areas where we could focus our efforts to support new faculty. The first is expand on existing orientation. So some participants noted that they experienced lack of guidance and orientation when they began their career. It was mentioned by some that when they did receive orientation, that the information provided maybe didn't give them enough information around how to navigate the organizational structure or who to go to with certain questions. It was also noted by a few participants that in general, it was hard to get comfortable with the culture of the organization. We had a few participants who went from one university to the other. And so trying to navigate those new norms was something that was a challenge to those faculty members. So if we can think about these challenges while planning orientation, we may be able to improve the new faculty experience that way. The second area we could focus our efforts is to strengthen teaching and time management skills. So several people mentioned that they weren't comfortable with the level of their teaching skills when they started in their position. Some people mentioned that they just had to kind of learn on the fly, and that it took them a couple years to finally feel comfortable in that role. And then similarly, we heard some people expressing challenges around time management. So people expressing that they didn't have the skills required to allocate their time to the various aspects of the role. And then the third area we could focus our efforts would be to encourage connection with senior colleagues. So when we asked participants what advice they would give to new faculty, many of them said that they would tell them to feel more comfortable going to their dean or their committee chair or their department chair and asking questions or asking for resources. So if we could find a way to encourage this connection, we may help new faculty to access this information and resources more readily. The second theme is, how can we improve the faculty experience? So within this theme, we looked at answers that participants gave about role satisfaction, around what aspects of their job they'd like to continue doing in retirement, if there were any qualities that they'd like to portray when they're retired. And we also looked at any challenges that participants talked about. So from the responses, we developed, again, 3 broad areas where we could focus to help improve the faculty experience. So the first is to leverage aspects of role satisfaction. So there were 4 areas of role satisfaction that were frequently noted: teaching and mentoring, collaboration, role diversity, and research. So teaching and mentoring was the most commonly noted aspect of role satisfaction, and a lot of the quotes that I read related to this theme were quite nice to read. You could really feel the participants' enjoyment for teaching and mentoring. I heard a lot of people saying that they enjoy satisfying students' desire for knowledge, they enjoy helping students overcome challenges, and they like seeing students taking their knowledge into the real world. The second area was collaboration. So participants mentioned enjoying connection with colleagues to gain varied perspectives and ideas and to learn about new research in their field. Participants also mentioned enjoying the diversity of their role, and then we heard a lot of people mention research as an aspect of role satisfaction. The second area is to encourage faculty to focus on the work that they never want to retire from. So we heard a lot of people saying that they'd like to continue teaching and mentoring and conducting research. So those 2 align well with those aspects of role satisfaction. We also heard people say that they'd like to do more work in the community. And we heard from about 20% of participants that perhaps they never want to retire, or they'd like to work as long as possible. The third area would be to provide resources to help faculty overcome their challenges. So we saw 3 reoccurring challenges. Of course, we have COVID-19, so shifting classes online, learning new technology, and just that reduced connection between students and faculty and other colleagues. We heard some frustration around the amount of administrative work and reporting, and that work was taking away from some of the aspects that provide them with more satisfaction. And then we have workload. The third theme is, how do we broaden our divisions? Within this theme, we looked at answers that participants gave around what motivates them to volunteer for organizations and what motivates them to engage with professional organizations. So based on the participants' responses, we have identified 6 ways we could broaden our reach beyond the current committee structure. So the first would be to provide opportunities for faculty to apply their expertise and to focus on their interests. We could create impactful work. We should be fostering connection and collaboration, hosting conferences for faculty members, offering opportunities for professional development, and providing resources to help faculty stay current in their field. So in terms of recommendations for future work, I would suggest that the remaining codes be reviewed, since we weren't able to get to all of the information due to time restraints. We could do more interview with more faculty to investigate the differences across the faculty types in more detail, and then we could try and target certain activities depending on the needs of certain faculty types. And then through more discussion and identification of priorities, we could potentially issue a more quantitative survey to gauge interest across our community. So before we go into questions and the breakout discussions, I'd like to thank the Member Engagement Committee members, all the other Science Atlantic staff, and Ashley Green, who provided pro bono support for this project.